it's Angela with the Mount Airy Public Library. Today we have the Dewey Decimal Players and Brack Llewellyn here, and they're going to do some improv storytelling for you. We have some suggestions earlier on the Facebook page, but I'll remind you of them. We have 7 different items in 3 different categories. So we ask that you choose one, and the first one who writes a comment that I can see, then we'll go with that. The magical objects are a magic wand, a crystal ball, magic beans, a magic lamp, a sword, a cloak, and a crown. The magical places are castle, a forest, a cottage, clouds, a costume ball, a mountain, or a lake. And the characters are a witch, a fairy, a giant, a genie, an elf, a unicorn, and a wizard. So those are some options that you have to choose from. And the first time I see a comment, all right, I see beans, costume ball, and one more. Someone give me a character. A witch, all right. Beans, a costume ball, and a witch. This is our first scene, all right? Here we go.
All right, I will tell the story, and this fine company of actors here will act it out. Now, this is all improvisation. They don't know what I'm going to say, so they're going to be making this up as they go along. Remind me again.
Beans, a witch,
and a costume ball.
And a costume ball.
All right, here we go. I'm going to step over here. All right, we need a good once upon a time from somebody.
Once upon a time,
There was a lovely young witch. She had a wonderful witch laugh. She lived in a small house in the corner of the woods. She had a fine supply of magic poultices, powders, and other things in her house. But one day she discovered she was low on magic beans. She checked her magic bean supply.
oh no,
Nothing. Nothing. Well, you can't be a witch without magic beans, right?
Right.
So off she went into the village to seek some magic beans. Now the market was open in the village that day, so all the local vendors were there,
Wares for sale.
selling various and sundry objects.
Black carpet. Various objects for sale.
But see, here's the problem. People in the town were afraid of the witch. They thought she would cast spells on them. So she had to convince them that she was their friend. She would try to buy something. She went to each vendor to try to buy something. And they would not sell it to her. She went to the next vendor for his wares. He would not sell. She went to the next vendor. Still nothing. The next vendor, who pretended not to see the witch at all. It was very sad for the witch. She had to have those magic beans. So she went back to her little house, and she began to think. Think. How can I make these people find out who I really am? That I'm not scary, that I'm not going to put a spell on them. Then she got a really good idea. Bing! She would throw a costume ball and invite everyone in the village. But she was a smart witch. She knew that if she invited them as the witch, they might not come. Because why? They were afraid of her. So she sat down and began to write out invitations to her costume ball. But instead of signing them by her witch's name, she signed them your local princess. Well, everybody wanted to come to the princess's costume ball, of course. So she spent the next few days preparing her little house for the costume ball. She cleaned everywhere. She scrubbed and scrubbed. She made sure things were arranged and all the clutter was taken out of the way. Then she began to decorate, putting up lovely lanterns and garlands and bells, everything to make the little house look lovely. And by the time she was finished, it really did. It was quite festive. See all those lovely bells and garlands? Finally, she knew she had to dress for the ball. Well, that meant taking off her witch's hat and hiding it away so they wouldn't know that she was a witch, and putting on something that would make her appear to be a princess. Ah. She found a lovely floral garland to put in her hair. So she sat down the night of the ball, and she waited for people to arrive. And soon they came in, wearing various costumes and pieces of costumes, all dressed up for the ball. And when they came in, they didn't realize it was the witch, and they greeted her very friendly, very kindly. And everyone enjoyed punch and food. There was music. There was much dancing. The evening went on, and all in all, everyone had a grand time at this costume ball.
Yay!
But then, as midnight approached, and everyone was growing a little tired, outside they heard a rumble of thunder, a flash of lightning. Everyone was confused and frightened because there'd been no clouds in the sky when they arrived. What could it be? But the witch knew. It was her enemy, the Thin Wizard. The Thin Wizard appeared at her door. And there he was. Now the Thin Wizard was quite powerful. One spell from him could turn you all into toads, or turn you all into hamsters, or turn you all into some sort of woodland creature.
Ew. I'm good.
The wizard knew he was powerful. He leapt up onto the bench and raised his arms to cast a spell. The witch had a decision to make. She could save the people at her party, but she would have to reveal that she was indeed the witch.
Someone help me.
So she made the decision. She took off her garland. She leapt up onto the bench alongside the wizard, and they began to cast spells at each other. Swish and boom, and swish and boom, and crash and swish and boom. And the little house lit up with brilliant light and loud explosions, and everyone huddled around the bench, cowering near the floor, afraid for their lives, as spell after spell flew through the air. Witch versus wizard, witch versus wizard. Finally, as the witch felt she was running out of power, she raised her arms, spread them wide, and threw one giant spell at the wizard, casting him off the bench, out of the house and into the sky. He went up and 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 up into the sky and disappeared into the night. Exhausted, the witch dropped to the bench, gasping for air. She thought the people might be frightened, but to her surprise, they gathered round her. She had saved their lives. Perhaps, she thought, perhaps they thought, she isn't such a bad witch after all. And that night, the witch not only gained some friends, but gained a new family. And the next time they came to visit, everybody brought what? Magic beans. And you know what happened? Except for the wizard, they all lived happily ever after. All right. Good one. Good one.
All right, guys, whatever you stand on there, you can't see your hip, so be careful.
Uh-oh.
All right, here's our next one. It was the fairy in the forest with a crown. Fairy in the forest with a crown. Are we ready? I'm excited. Let's
All
go.
right. Fairy forest, and a crown. Once there was a deep forest.
Once upon a time.
There was a deep, dark forest. And it was rumored there were all sorts of magical creatures in this forest. But the only one we knew about was a little fairy. She was small and quiet and unassuming, and she never really bothered anyone. She spent her days flitting about the forest, smelling the flowers, getting a drink of water at the nearby stream, talking to the animals. And the animals spoke back, of course, because it was a magical forest.
Hi.
Then one day, a couple of hunters came into the forest.
Hello there. What are you doing?
We're hunting. What's it look like we're doing?
We already caught one.
Smart.
Beautiful.
Not anymore.
Oh, the fairy was horrified. These hunters had dared invade the forest. Just as it looked like her life might be in danger, the hunter came forward.
No! Please, no!
He raised his sword, but out of the forest suddenly came a bear. He was a little bear. He was a little bear, but he was a bear nonetheless.
He's my friend. Don't hurt me. I don't want to die.
And the bear growled and moved toward the hunters, closer and closer. They were terrified. And the bear gave one great roar. And the hunters ran away. Oh, the fairy was so grateful. She gave the bear a little hug. Oh, and the bear revealed that his name was Kevin.
Oh, hi, Kevin.
Kevin the bear. And the bear and the fairy became really good friends.
You know pick some berries? Yeah, look at it.
What was our third one?
Fairy in the forest with a crown.
Aha, okay, now we're going. So the fairy and the bear lived a wonderful life together. The bear sort of became a companion, a pet, someone to talk to. And after the bear had been spending time with the fairy for several weeks, they sat down one day and the bear told the fairy a little story. That he'd only been a bear for a short time.
What?
Once upon a time, he had been a person.
What?
Not a magical person, just a person.
I didn't know
And a
that.
witch had cast a spell on him and turned him into a bear.
Really?
At first he didn't like it. But after a while he became used to being a bear. He sort of liked it. He got to sleep all winter. He got to spend long walks through the forest and eat berries. And no one bothered him because everybody's a little bit afraid of a bear. Especially Kevin. But his name in real life had been Kevin. But now the bear said, you know what? I think I might like to be a person again. And he asked the fairy if she had any magic that could help him.
I'm not really big on magic, but I'm sure we can find someone in the forest.
Ah, a great idea. So the fairy and Kevin went off in search of someone who could help them. The fairy had heard of a section of the forest where the trees were magical. Magic trees? Come on in.
I heard about magic trees. Oh. Oh.
These trees were tall and stately, a little bit frightening, and very, very old. And the rumor was they could talk.
I heard you guys can talk. So.
No.
No.
Why would you believe that? Very quiet.
Oh my gosh.
So the fairy asked as politely as she knew how,
Would you guys ever think about helping my friend Kevin here? He was turned into a bear not too long ago. He was originally a human though.
so the trees talked it over among themselves. and they agreed to change Kevin back into a person. But it would require a sacrifice from the fairy. If they were going to turn Kevin into a person, then they would have to turn the fairy into a bear. It was kind of an exchange. The fairy thought about this. It was a very big deal. She thought and thought about it. Did she really want to give up being a fairy for her friend Kevin? Finally, she decided, yes,
Yes.
that was the way to go. So she sat down in the middle of the trees, and the trees leaned over her, and their great branches began to sway in the wind and shift, and a great wind came up, a loud, whooshing wind. It threatened to blow the fairy away off the ground, but she held on tight. And Kevin stood nearby, ready to help, anxious for the transformation. And as the fairy sat there and the waves, the wind blew and the branches waved greatly and the wind whooshed through the woods, slowly the fairy and Kevin began to change places in a magical sort of transformation. And then slowly the trees stopped waving. The winds died down. And they assumed their stately stance once again. And when we looked, Kevin was back as a person. And the fairy was now a bear. The fairy had made a great sacrifice for the bear, for Kevin. So Kevin decided to keep the bear as a friend and a pet, just as the fairy had befriended him. And even found the fairy a beautiful crown to wear.
Yay!
And you know something? The fairy discovered she kind of liked being a bear. She got to eat berries and go fishing in the stream and sleep all winter long and pretty much eat as much food as she wanted. It wasn't a bad life after all. So it turns out, after all this magic, that the fairy and Kevin and the trees all lived
Happily ever after.
All right. Do we have another suggestion?
That's what I'm looking for. All right. We need a place, a character, or a magical object.
Need one from each column.
Let me remind you of our choices. It can be a magic wand, a crystal ball, magic beans, a magic lamp, a sword, a cloak, or a crown, a castle, a forest, a cottage, clouds, a costume ball, a mountain, or a lake, a witch, a fairy, a giant, a genie, an elf, a unicorn, or a wizard. All right, does anyone have something? All right, well, here's one. Magic lamp.
Magic lamp.
Something new, we have a zoo.
Oh dear.
Magic lamp, a zoo. What else? We need a character. How about a unicorn? Oh, someone said giant. All right. Magic lamp, a castle. Nope, a zoo. Magic lamp, a zoo, and a giant. All right.
Magic lamp, a zoo, and a giant.
Once upon a time.
There was a great giant. He was quite tall and powerful, and highly regarded in his land, for he was a good giant. Not all giants are good, but this one was in particular. He often did things to help the people of the nearby villages, lifting heavy objects. When storm clouds came, he would fill his great lungs with air and blow the clouds away. He was quite helpful indeed. In fact, he was so useful to the villages that when the villages became very poor, which they did, the giant began to think of a way for the village to make some money, some schmeckles, which was the coin of the realm, as exhibited by Alyssa. Now, the coffers of the village were quite low. Not much money left. What could they do, thought the giant? Well, he thought, I could put myself on display and charge people, but that's a little bit demeaning. That's a little bit undignified. So, he got an idea.
I know what we have to do.
What must we do?
We must hunt and put things into a zoo.
Aha! A zoo, of course. People love zoos.
I like zoos. Animals are cute.
So, the giant went out into the forest, and he knew there were lots of unusual, strange animals in this forest. Not just your typical camels or bears or other creatures, but strange, unusual creatures that people would like to see. The first creature he found was a cowster, half cow, half hamster. Quite a clever little beast. So the cowster went into the zoo. He searched some more. And he found a wrenalope, which is half antelope and half wren, a bird. It was the only flying antelope he'd ever seen. And it hopped as well, apparently. Into the zoo went the wrenalope. The giant searched further, using his great height to look across the forest and down between the trees. And he went down to the river because he knew these creatures would have to have water in the heat of the day. And sure enough, there he found a mystic pig. It looked like an ordinary pig, but it had strange abilities. It could turn invisible. It could levitate off the ground like a ghost. It knew sign language. It had many talents. So the mystic pig made his way into the zoo, joining the others. The giant continued to search. He was having good luck. This is good. Performing quite the zoo here. And then he found the orangutan. Half cat, half orangutan. Part monkey, part leopard. Great strength. Powerful enough to pick up even the giant up off the ground. Faster than any cat he'd ever seen. 60, 70 miles an hour it could run. And had a huge cry you could hear all over the forest. Perfect, thought the giant. Into the zoo with the orangutan. One more creature he had to find. He searched and he searched, and he found it. It was a bleemin' flag. Now, bleemin' flags are rare. There's only a handful of them in the whole world. But here's the thing about a bleemin' flag. The bleemin' flag can speak like a person.
Hello.
The bleemin' flag also knows sign language, like the orangutan. A bleemin' flag can fly a little bit. And the bleemin' flag can read people's minds.
I bet you're thinking about the zoo.
And sure enough, he was thinking about the zoo.
I know.
Good like that.
So the giant offered the bleemin' flag a place in his zoo.
There we go. I don't know.
The bleemin' flag was smart. The bleemin' flag said, what does it pay?
How
much do I get?
Decent minimum wage.
No.
It's a full-time job, though.
The Bleeman Flag would only go to work at the zoo for a proper salary with benefits.
I need some benefits.
You can get dental and regular. Okay.
I need more. I need premium.
Okay, we'll do the whole package, okay? You're worth it.
All right, so finally the giant offered them a full package of benefits plus a living wage. And the Bleeman Flag finally agreed.
Okay.
And off the Bleeman Flag went. So the zoo was full and quite productive, and the giant set up a booth outside the zoo with a table and some money. And people came from all over. They paid 10 schmeckles each to walk through and see the creatures. And they put on quite a show. They made their sounds.
Boo.
They did sign language. They flew. They screamed. The Bleeman Flag read their minds.
I bet you're thinking about running away. How did you know?
All in all, it was a very successful enterprise. And over time, the village became the #1 attraction in the entire kingdom. And they had lots and lots of schmeckles. And just when it looked like they were going to make all the money they needed, the Bleeman Flag organized the animals,
Come here.
and they decided to go on strike. They refused to entertain unless they got money too.
She's getting paid.
Hey, I'm just with them, okay? She's our union worker. Yes.
So everybody has to get paid. So the giant reluctantly cut everybody in for some schmeckles,
Excuse me? Hello?
and eventually some benefits, and 2 weeks vacation.
Ooh. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Excuse me?
And dental.
Excuse me? I need it. Give me some schnickels.
And flexible work schedules.
Thank you. Yeah, I gotta go to my kids' recital. Just saying.
And everything they should have. And once they'd gotten all their demands and the money kept rolling in, it still turned out that everybody, the animals and the giant and the village, all lived.
Happily ever after.
Wow, that was a big one. All right.
All right, guys, that's awesome. All right, before we part company, I want to remind you that the library is open. We're open currently Monday through Thursday from 9:30 until 5. Friday we're open from 9:30 until 4. Saturday we're open from 10 until 1. Those hours may change later, so just be watching this page and you'll get all your information. I want to remind kids to please register for summer reading. You can still do that here, or you can go online through our website, nwrl.org, and you can register for summer reading there. If you come here and register, I have little book bags to give you with some fun reading summer stuff in there. We have our story walk that we put up last week is still up. So if you'd like to come walk around the library and read the book, The Princess and the Lord of the Night, you can do that. It's just a quick little path around the library that your family can enjoy together. I want to remind you that a lot of the programs that we've already done prior to this week are available online, so you can go back and find those and re-watch them. You can also find a lot of Brack's stories and some book chats and things like that on the library's new YouTube channel, Mount Airy Public Library. I just want to remind you that today, a challenge that we had for you to do at home was to build fairy tale structures using candy, toothpicks, and popsicle sticks. So if you happen to do that today, please post the pictures here on our Facebook page, or you can email them to us. We'll remind you that next week, these same kids plus another will be doing a play for us called Elemental. So I hope that you'll tune in next Monday morning at 11 o'clock for that. This has been a busy summer. We also have one more online event on July 29th, the Snow Sisters will be doing a story time. So keep that in mind. Lots going on still. The library is open. We can still do curbside service if you prefer to do that. I want to thank the kids. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you who they are. They are real troopers, and this has been so much fun working with them and rehearsing these improvs, trying to get some ideas of where we might take the stories. And I want to thank Bryce Llewellyn for not only being our storyteller today, but for being our storyteller since we shut down in March and have been telling stories ever since. So I appreciate his efforts for the library as well. So let me let you meet the kids. Come on up here, guys, and introduce yourselves. Come on up. No, say your name.
Let's go to it. Give me a second. My name's Olivia. Been here a long time. I'm Alma. Okay.
I'm Timothy. I have also been here a long time. I'm William. I've been here longer than Timmy.
I'm Melissa. I haven't been here very long.
I'm Lily. I haven't been here very long either. But I like it.
And I'm Bryce Llewellyn. If you like what these guys do, they're members of the Dewey Decimal Players. Angela is their director and their sponsor. You can be a Dewey too, right?
Right. To be a Dewey, you have to be ages 12 through 18. I want to encourage everyone. What I loved about these improvs that we did was using your imagination, being creative, taking next to nothing, and creating a whole world. And I hope that you're doing that at home. Please encourage that, parents. Let kids use their imaginations. And hold on just a second. Oh, okay, I will be with you. So please let kids use their imaginations and be creative, because this is so important for creativity, all right? Thank you guys for tuning in. It was good to see you today. Y'all take one more bow.
And we all lived happily ever after.
Big bow. 3 cheers for Miss Angela. Hip hip.
Hooray!
Hip hip.
Hooray!
Hip hip.
Hooray!